Hey, please tell me you guys remember Hyrule Warrior's Age of Calamity. Now that the game's out and about and fully complete with its DLC, there is one huge question that Zelda fans are constantly pondering.
Now, personally, I really did enjoy Hyrule Warrior's Age of Calamity. When it comes to the Dynasty Warriors game, which is a little bit off topic, when they make the games modeled after other IPs, such as Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, Persona 5 Strikers, and Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, they put out their best work. I'll say out of those three, I don't know which one is the best. But going back to Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, I've been getting this question every now and again, considering that Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is based off the supposed backstory of Breath of the Wild. But if you play the game, you kind of already know what happens. And I understand there are a lot of people disappointed, but I mean, at the same time, it was a Hyrule Warriors game, not a Legend of Zelda game. But even in that sense, Age of Calamity is pretty much canon to Breath of the Wild. But the question that keeps on coming up is it going to be canon to Breath of the Wild 2, considering one big focal point within that of Age of Calamity. Now, of course, if you haven't played the game and you want to play it, I definitely recommend it. I sunk over 100 hours into it, 100%ed it completely. Be sure to take off the video here because mad spoilers. All right, you did it? Good? You're still here? All right, awesome. So the big spoiler within Age of Calamity, which has a lot of people asking if it's going to be canon to Breath of the Wild 2 or not, we still don't have a name, is the fact that the champions from the future, they're not really champions, we call them champions all the time. Teba, Yunobu, Riju, and of course Sidon come from the future into Age of Calamity, that separate timeline that Terraco went back in time in order to create. See Zelda timeline split on page something on Hyrule Historia. So they come back from the past in order to assist the heroes and breed a new, awesome, perfect future for Age of Calamity, in which, the calamity didn't really happen in the 100 years of sadness from Breath of the Wild into Breath of the Wild and possibly into that of Breath of the Wild 2. They were there and they helped the heroes, but then they were able to go back to their own time. Now, up until the DLC, it was pretty much argued, I'm like, oh, are these the same people from the Breath of the Wild timeline? Even though Sidon did say, no, I will not let you take her again, which pretty much states that, like, hey, Mipha died where he came from. But at this point, did they already meet Link? Well, there is a lot of information within the game itself that are not told through cutscenes, which, by the way, has a lot of info in those missions on the map that insinuate that they had already met Link at that point. But then in the DLC, it really put everything front and center that Yunobu was remembering that of Link from the original Breath of the Wild timeline, in which he's like, oh yeah, that hero, that guy, he really helped me out. He helped me to get stronger, and I need to get stronger for everyone in order to protect him with the power of Daruk's protection. That scene alone was just like, oh, I'm so glad they included that. Now, they go back to their own time, so since Breath of the Wild 2 is a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, you would think that the champions would remember what they went through, the new champions, from the past. And that is the way that Age of Calamity could be canon to Breath of the Wild 2. But if we're going off the idea of multiple aspects of time travel, maybe they lost their memories on the way there, in which it would be canon, but in terms like, oh, no, they lost their memories, so that's why they don't reference it in Breath of the Wild 2. If they don't. If they do reference it in Breath of the Wild 2, just a smaller reference, it is canon, but not that, consequential. I mean, maybe they get a lot more battle experience, and then they come back from the past, and then they go to Princess Zelda like, okay, we're ready to be the new champions. Oh, now we went to the past and we fixed the timeline, another timeline, and we battle ready, we hard, and we ready to roll. So maybe that's how they become champions, and that's how Age of Calamity could be canon to Breath of the Wild 2. And, when we deal with time travel, especially those that travel through time themselves in past Zelda games, Oracle of Ages, Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, all that good jazz, those that do the time travel, they remember everything. Link remembers everything, and Link remembers everything, and yeah, Link remembers everything. So if you're traveling through time yourself, oh yeah, Skyward Sword, of course, Skyward Sword, yeah, Skyward Sword. If you're traveling through time yourself, then of course you're going to remember it. So I feel that they are going to remember their time in Age of Calamity into Breath of the Wild 2, but at the very least, it'll be like a minimal like references like, oh yeah, you know, we went back in time and we assist a Link in that timeline, and then that could be it. Or it could be a bit more substantial, like I said with this theory, in which they went back in time, they helped out those in Age of Calamity, got battle ready, got hardened, was able to like, you know, truly taste what went down during the Calamity and save Hyrule from the Calamity, and thus in the future they are now dubbed through their efforts of, you know, what they said, but they can corroborate the four of them. They can easily corroborate that. They're like, okay, you guys are champions. The new champions, Teba, Yonobu, Riju, and Sidon. Welcome. And I really hope they don't go through the same mess that their, you know, predecessors went to. And then of course, you know, the Divine Beasts are gonna need pilots in Breath of the Wild too, unless, you know, in the beginning of the game, Ganon's like, or I should say Ganondorf's just like, nah. Boom! It just blows up all the Divine. Can you imagine that happens? But, you know, in that very much sense, I have another video explaining how, like, the timeline split works in Age of Calamity, in which, you know, technically Age of Calamity is indeed canon to The Legend of Zelda when it comes to Breath of the Wild, you know, initiating another timeline split. And then even though people were, you know, mad about Age of Calamity exploring time travel in that sense, I'm like, you know, one, it was Hyrule Warriors. Two, you know, welcome to Zelda. Like, enjoy your stay. Where have you been? Now, a lot of people would argue, like, oh, they did something similar in the original Hyrule Warriors, but then when all that time travel mess happened with the time displacement using the Triforce, they created parallel worlds from that of Skyward Sword, Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, in which these events within the worlds displaced in Hyrule Warriors seem to exclude Link and even Zelda. Like, you know, at that point in time, you know, Fi had not been drawn out of the pedestal, you know, the Temple of the Sword, and it's like, oh, you're not my master, but you can be a master. It's just like, what? Like, where's the actual Link when this is all going on? It's like, oh, he was outside of the time displacement. That's not how it works. But Hyrule Warriors, completely non-canon. That first one, nah. But Age of Calamity, definitely canon to a degree, to a fault. And you know, that's really interesting. That's the first thing within The Legend of Zelda, outside of The Legend of Zelda, that's canon to Zelda. I mean, Nintendo and other franchises have had non-games, you know, be canon to other sources or have canon sources from games into other games. You know, Persona 5 Strikers, it's literally just Persona 5 Strikers. So that's literally a sequel. That's the next part of Persona 5, which is really cool, by the way. Persona fans, if you have not tried that game out, it's nice. It's spicy. A worthy follow-up to Persona 5. But then when it comes to, like, you know, Super Smash Brothers, like, for Wii U and into Ultimate, you know, Dark Pit and Pit's and Palutena's storyline did continue from, you know, Kid Icarus Uprising, which Dark Pit's like, oh, now I'm a, you know, I'm a knight, or I should say, no, they didn't say a knight, just a follower of Viridi, or like a captain for Viridi, or, you know, what was it? Cavalry captain for Viridi. Anyways, you know, now Dark Pit is affiliated with Viridi, and you can see that in his, you know, upbeat, and that's kind of how it goes down from the lore when it comes to Kid Icarus into Smash Bros. And maybe even back, but we'll have to wait and see. But to answer the question, at the end of the day, Age of Calamity, it is indeed canon to Breath of the Wild. Will it be canon to Breath of the Wild 2? More than likely, yes, but just in a very small, minimal way, in which, like, oh, if it was or wasn't, it would be inconsequential. But it might be super consequential if this is how they become champions in Breath of the Wild 2. And hey, Eiji Aonuma was supervising the story of Age of Calamity, so I mean, like, it could go down. But we'll have to wait and see. Let me know what you think about this conundrum and this video in the comment section below, and be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe to HMK for more Zelda content every week. Breath of the Wild 2, we still don't have a name. Hey, listen, it's my job to help you guys and hype you guys up when it comes to this drought of Breath of the Wild 2, because if Nintendo's not gonna do it, your boy is. So, until the next video, this has been HMK, and I'll check you guys later.